folks. Welcome to CreativeSide Podcast. We are here today with special guest Scott Laskowski. We're also with Cody here co-hosting, and we've got Casey over on the switcher today. How's it going over there, Casey?
It's going very well. I'm excited to get this conversation going, you guys.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. So let's dive in and let's start to talk to Scott. So Scott, I used to work with you guys back in the day out at the Wood-Mizer plant. Mm-hmm. Most people know it by that. Tell us a little bit about those days.
Okay.
From your standpoint.
We're really blessed because we got to live the American dream out of our house in Speedway, Indiana, where we built some different businesses. I won't go into all those, but Wood-Mizer is what we're known best for.
Right.
That grew. Eventually, we started a branch of that down here in Madisonville just because that's where my wife's from, Brenda. And we ran the product R&D out of this facility here. And that's where you came along with the R&D, with the lawnmowers and all that. So it was a great ride. We built the company into an international, well-known brand to this day, $150 million international company. And we sold it in 2006 to our employees with a very successful ESOP merger. And then we launched into the other stuff that we're going to talk about today in the form of OrganiLock.
I remember back in those days when I was working there, we were always, the culture there was figure out a way to make it better. Everything that we'd done from, blade technology for the sawmill through to the lawnmower, everything was about figure out how to make it better and make it perform better. As a matter of fact, I was looking for I don't know if you've seen it or not, but I believe it was Ground Maintenance Magazine. The articulating more we developed there, basically, it made the cover of that. It was pretty cool. I've got it at my house. I couldn't find it this morning, but I keep that pretty close to me. I like that. Being a part of that was awesome.
You mentioned that, making things better. I also like to put out there what my dad always used to say. He said, number one, you can do everything for the right reasons, okay? And then the other was his heart was in the ministry, and we used a business that was very successful with its end goal being to do ministry work. Oh, wow. So we gave away a lot of sawmills. We had a whole network of that around the world, and to this day they still do. So getting right down to it, that's what we love to do, and anything we do with these new businesses will be the same.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember back in the day, I heard the stories and everything as we was working there, sawmills going on a ministry trip, to some country around the world to help people.
The employees got to go, yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah. So what was the run of the years there? I think I was with you guys for about 7 years there. Mm-hmm. And I remember there was you guys got into the burner technology, and I actually went and picked up a biomass burner from that the University of Arkansas was working on, brought it back, and they kind of abandoned their R&D efforts on that, and we picked it up.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
When the family was still involved and my job was product development, we always had an emphasis on new product, getting it better, those kinds of things. And near the end, before we sold, we were working on biomass burning technology because our sawmills made mountains of sawdust. Didn't have anything to do with it, but here it is. It's great energy for heating buildings and whatever. So we developed a small burner, which then evolved into it's a million BTU burners and one you picked up. Wow. And when the family unit pulled out, we sold out, they dropped R&D. They had cash cow products. They were making a lot of money. They weren't very good at R&D by themselves, and the burners that they built, frankly, just weren't that good, and they were a liability. So that's what you did. You went and picked up a liability machine, brought it back so they could disassemble it. Now, fast forward, we left the company as a family. I picked up the bioburner technology.
Right.
And then we evolved that into where we are today that we'll talk about a little more here, but we took it, refined it, and turn it into a niche industry where you could use sawdust, burn sawdust, manure, pellets, all sorts of stuff through this machine to create heat, add value to your scrap to make heat. And then ultimately, OrganiLock came in. We'll cover that a little bit more.
Yeah, I remember the days back when you guys were working on the burner, and it was always fascinating to me. I didn't quite understand it, but the temperatures that it would burn, it didn't really produce any,
no smoke,
the no smoke coming off of it. It was burned clean and burned complete. There was virtually no ash or anything like that come out of the machine.
Uh-huh. Yep. It's cool technology.
So we'll fast forward a little bit up till today and where you're at with OrganiLock now, and you can start to tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the evolution was, of course, through Wood-Mizer, portable sawmills, created sawdust. We needed to do something with the sawdust, so we made the burners. We could burn sawdust, and then we found that it was difficult to dry the sawdust because you can't burn wet sawdust. So we made little dryers to go with that, trying to create a niche market. And then fast forward several years, we determined that niche market was too small. And we just weren't going to be able to sell enough burners to people that wanted to dry their own sawdust and heat their own buildings. So we started looking at other ways to add value to the scrap side of these operations. For instance, a sawmill, you put in a sawmill, the first thing you do is you pursue how do you get rid of the slabs and the chips and all that. Because if you don't, you end up with a mountain that chokes the place off.
Right.
So in working with schools, they had similar visions and they had grants. We ended up working with Murray State University, great school. Shout out to them. They connected with us, and then other industries also trying to find value-added solutions to problems. And the Asian carp industry popped up, which many people are familiar with. They're an invasive species. They're the ones that'll jump out of the boat or out of the water and knock you out of the boat kind of thing. They're huge. Well, they're not known for being best food in the world, but there are businesses that are creating fillets. There are 2 fillets in an Asian carp that are quite good, and they're bone-free. The rest, it's pretty messy. So you end up all this scrap out of the Asian carp industry that needed somewhere to go. So through Murray State University and the introduction to these people doing that, and then our technology with dryers and processors and grinders and all that, we ended up trying lots of different things, and we ended up blending the Asian carp. I'm going to go ahead and introduce this term, animal mortality, at this point. The technical term is tankage, but you got all this stuff left over. Offal is another term, OFFAL. And we brought that into our place and started testing with our equipment, where we could blend it with sawdust, one of the problems we were trying to get rid of, the Asian carp scraps we were trying to get rid of, put it through our drying systems, and we ended up with this powder. It looked like sawdust, but it was full of the nutrient from the fish. And that led us down another 10-year path now of saying, wait a minute, this stuff works great. Not supposed to. You're not supposed to be able to take fresh fish and fresh biomass and put it in the ground. Everybody knows you have to compost it first and those kinds of things. So I won't go too deep into that detail at the moment, but we ended up coming up with a technology of combining the cycle of life, animal mortality, with biomass to create food to feed the soil.
No.
And here we are today. There's a lot more to that. There's some science we won't go into because it always confuses people, but very simply, let's do it this way. You're probably old enough when you went to school. The Pilgrims came over, and they worked with the Indians, Squanto, indigenous people. Do you remember that story?
Yes.
What did Squanto teach the Pilgrims?
It taught them to basically put a fish in the ground, and then you plant on top.
That's called using animal mortality to feed the soil. And then the plant knows what to do with the nutrients once you've fed the soil and all the microbes, and you get a healthy plant. So whether it's fish or it's chickens from Tyson, which is what we use, or Asian carp, which is where we started and kind of discovered this whole thing, it's all animal mortality. Those nutrients are what feed the microbes in the soil. And the microbes being well fed are what feed the plant. And what we've been doing for the last century or more is ignoring the microbes and feeding the plant only. All right, so we've flip-flopped it. We've created a soil food. And that story is what seems to finally click for people. Wait a minute. So we've taken the oldest technology or procedure around, and that is use manures, dead animals to feed the soil. And we've added new technology with dryers and processors, and we dehydrate it and pasteurize it and all that, so that you can take all those nutrients, densify it, and put it in a pellet or in a powder, and put it on the soil, in the soil. Feed your plants all summer long.
Wow.
Our motto is, it's simple, feed the soil.
Yeah. And that's so interesting to listen to you talk about that. And even before we started the podcast, we were talking about it a little bit, because in my mind, I'm thinking, I used to be in the lawn care business, and we done lawn care treatments, and, so I'm very familiar with fertilizers, synthetic fertilizers. Mm-hmm. And you kind of explained it in a way that like a light bulb just popped on. So the synthetic fertilizer is kind of like a drug to the plant. Can you explain that a little bit, how you did earlier versus what your product does?
Okay. The synthetics, like we talked about a little bit ago, are created through a process they call Haber-Bosch. Okay. They've learned how to pull the nitrogen out of the air and turn it into a form that you and I are familiar with in the form of 10-10-10,
right,
those kinds of things. But what people they aren't taught and they don't understand is that type of plant food is not available to the microbes. Mm-hmm. So the more we use the easy stuff, the 10-10-10s, the more we kill off the soil microbes because they have nothing to eat. There's a huge movement right now called bio fertilizer. Mm-hmm. And people around the world have discovered, or they understand finally, that we need to replace the mm-hmm. synthetics mm-hmm. and put fungus and bacteria and microbes in general back in the soil. And that's all well and good, but you're going to look around, you can say, you can find that stuff everywhere, but nobody feeds the microbes.
Right.
I challenge you to go find them. And that's why we're different. That's why we're excited about this patent that we finally gotten after a 10-year fight. We're the only ones doing it worldwide that we know of.
Wow.
In a scalable, affordable form. Now, people do it in their backyard. They'll use dead fish. And the fishermen, a lot of them do that in their gardens now. But it's not scalable. We got to do something that could feed millions of acres.
Wow.
So that's pretty exciting. I told you about that little video ad. Maybe this is a good time to interject that.
We'll go ahead and roll. Let's roll that.
It's just
right
a
now.
1 minute. Here's what we do.
Our soil is exhausted. We are depleting our soil faster than it can replenish itself. We must accelerate soil regeneration now. The bill has come due. The best way to quickly restore our soil is to add back the highest concentration of nutrients and organic matter that we can. Native Americans are known to have done this when they buried fish beneath their plantings. They understood that death feeds life and that the cycle of life maintains balance. Composting while responsible waste management is not fast enough to repair our agricultural soils. Much of the energy potential is burned off before it ever reaches the field, and usually compost is made mostly of plants, therefore not nutrient dense enough to immediately replenish our severely depleted farmland. We should take our cue from indigenous farming practices and incorporate the cycle of life. We honor the soil by honoring the cycle of life.
So with that video, hopefully you can understand the bigger picture. Composting's great. It's not strong enough. It's not a scalable solution. The manures, all that. Again, we need something that can be scalable. Mm-hmm. So here's some statistics for you. We're in Tyson territory, right? Everybody knows about them. Mm-hmm. There's a number of the animals that don't make it from, the Tyson hatcheries all the way through. That number is 9% of all animals in the factory farming world die before they go to any kind of market. 9%.
Wow.
So what do they do with that? They compost them. Who knows where a lot of it goes. We just don't know it all. Most of it in the chicken industry is composted on farm in their manure piles. So as you're doing that, you're burning off, the composting process burns off a lot of the nutrient. Here's your quick education for the day. And I'm going to tell you first, I'm not against composting. There's great reasons for it, but there's reasons to not do it as well. So for instance, sorry, a little sciencey here. You put your compost components together in a pile, mm-hmm. and the goal is to have it burn itself out into something that would call humus. It's the carbon component of the compost pile that's ready to be consumed by microbes. So during that process, have you ever seen a compost pile?
Yes.
What do you see during that period? If you turn that compost pile in the middle of its process, you'll see steam. There'll be gases coming off. So you're letting off a bunch of greenhouse gases.
Okay.
You're burning off the nutrients that the soil could be using for food because the microbes in that pile are using it up. And then when you get all done and the pile cools down, that's your indication they used all the food. So you put the compost in your field, you've got microbes that are just still barely alive, ready to starve. They've already used up their food, so you're not solving a problem in terms of fixing the soil in a way that you can rejuvenate it quickly.
Gotcha.
It's a great additive to the soil. It helps break up clay soils and things like that, but the food's gone. Most of it. So that's why we do what we do. We grab all those nutrients. That's hence the name OrganiLock. We take organic materials and we lock in the nutrient of the animal mortality. And then we feed it to the soil. Gotcha.
So you're introducing us back to the way the things were back in the day.
Yeah.
And you're taking away from the synthetic process of growing food. You're not feeding the plant, you're feeding the soil, which feeds the plant.
Got it.
Yes.
That's it. And it's that simple. And again, our motto is it's simple, feed the soil. It's so simple that people don't grasp it. It's like, well, what's that mean? Because they've never seen it. I would challenge you to go to Lowe's or wherever and try to find something that says soil food. Pretty soon you'll be able to go to Rural King and see it. We're going to actually start there.
That's awesome.
So that's a good beginning.
So you, like the product you'll be selling to Rural King, is there a product that you could get and literally put in the spreader and put on your lawn? Or is your product designed for shrub beds?
Great question. When we build this product, we make the food, but it wouldn't be worth much if it didn't have the microbes with it. Okay, so our process pasteurizes everything. In other words, we kill all the bacteria, all of the microbes and everything that's in these food sources, right? And then it comes out in two forms. One would be a pellet that's easier to spread around on fields and things like that. It's not dusty. And then we'll grind those pellets up into a powder that makes it easy to put in your raised bed, your individual plant on the shelf or whatever to feed that soil. So that's where I'm headed is we add microbes back, but there's two classifications of mycorrhizal fungi. That's what everybody talks about. Most people don't talk about two kinds though. And sorry, I'm going to give a little lesson in science. Mycorrhizal is a term that means that the microbes have a relationship with the plant. They work through the root structure and they exchange exudates and all sorts of stuff that's crazy. Bacteria is the same way. Well, they have endomycorrhizal fungi and ecto. And this is important because the endo version that we put in there is for things like strawberries and tomatoes and zucchini and all that, those kinds of plants. Well, you talk about landscape and turf and things like that.
Yep.
The woody type, the trees, they need ectomycorrhizal fungi to work correctly. So we put both kinds in. So when we feed the soil, we're feeding the whole spectrum.
Wow.
We put the good stuff back in the soil. Those microbes wake up and say, hey, I got a feast here. And they do their thing. And there's one more level to this. Again, science, sorry, but it's the saprophytic fungi don't talk to the plants at all. So you want the mycorrhizals that do. The saprophytics don't talk to them at all, but they break it. They're the breakdown engine. They're the ones that take our stuff, break it down, and then the endo and ecto can move on and do what they do. So sorry, there's my science for the day. I'm done.
Yeah, this is a CreativeSide Podcast, and we've had on a lot of creative people mainly in music and things like that, but we're kind of pivoting a little bit and bringing on some business owners because that is a creative thing. And I'm thinking in my mind right now, how is your mind wired to think of something like that and to start to do that?
Number one, it's a curse and a blessing, I suppose, both, that I just can't let go when the time comes. So when we stumbled across this, and I'll say it, we stumbled into it, and we understood that you're not able to put foods like this in the soil without composting it first. Everybody knows that. And we found out we were doing this thing where we weren't composting. I reached out to the PhDs of University of Kentucky and Murray and It just so happens my uncle, Dennis Laskowski, you can look him up. He worked for Ronald Reagan with the EPA during those times and represented the U.S. government. He's a soil scientist, biochemist, a whole bunch of stuff related to this. So I reached out to him and said, what is going on? How does this work? And he didn't have a good answer at first. And we got to studying and thinking, and we finally figured out that what we're doing is creating this product that actually feeds the saprophytic fungus to make this happen. And it was in a very concentrated form, but spread out very easily. So everything worked. Yeah. Purely accidental in that case. But I guess I'll tell you another story, because when we first started with all this, I'll throw in the word biochar. That's another one a lot of people on here will like and listen to. We accidentally found out we were making high-quality biochar with our burners. Okay, continuous stream, automatic. And I went to a show one time, and then one of the guys there, Eastern European, was all excited because of biochar. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I knew nothing. Came back, studied it. And at that time, it's 2015, you would find organic soil mixes at Lowe's that would have all this bat guano and worm castings and biochar, and it was supposed to be the latest, greatest everything. So I went and bought soil from Lowe's, did a broccoli test, and I made some of our stuff with Asian carp, compared them side to side, same plants out of the same flat. Our plants took off. The stuff in the high quality other product, the plants died, or were dying, let's put it that way. So I took those plants, put it back on our side, and they perked back up. So at that point I was hooked. I couldn't stop. There's something there, and there's so much more to this story, but that's how I got started. And
and we talked a little bit earlier too, when before we started the podcast, and we're talking a little bit about, if we continue to use synthetic fertilizers, we've been using synthetic fertilizer, I believe you said, for 120 years.
1900 is when they designed it.
And it's basically sterilizing the soil. And if we don't make a change, we're not going to be able to produce the food.
To feed the 10 billion people that are going to soon to be. That's right.
Yeah.
And this is so verifiable in the RFK Jr. and everybody's like, well, there's a clip out there that he was talking to Tucker Carlson, where at the end of the clip, and his summary of this whole emotional thing was really cool, is if you want to solve all the world's problems, carbon sequestration, carbon in the soil, fix the soil.
If we can find that clip, we'll try to put the link in the description down here where people could go look at that. Yeah,
it's amazing. It's that simple. Everybody wants to put carbon back in the soil. What's the best way? You feed the soil to feed a plant, photosynthesis. It's the plan God had to begin with.
Right.
That plants put the carbon back in the soil. It's the best way by far. Nobody's going to argue that. And the best way to feed the soil, we argue, is to bring back the cycle of life and take this 9% animal mortality that's thrown away every day. As long as you and I are eating, this resource is available. People want to get rid of it. They'll give it to you. Some places will pay you to take it.
Wow.
And there's no reason why this technology can't be scaled up. Distributed manufacturing is our plan. I make the machines left over from Woodmiser days and onward, but we quit selling our machines to the public to be able to someday set up these little distributed manufacturing sites all over the place. We don't want to truck dead animals very far. I don't like going more than 10 miles. But I can make, say 10 tons a day out of one facility and start doing that all over the place. And that's only servicing about 16 of the 700 houses here for Tyson in this area.
Wow.
So now let's start talking the pigs and the cows and the turkeys and it just goes on and on what's available that we're not using it. It's foolish not to use it.
Even animals at Humane Society, they get put down where they got to go somewhere.
Yeah, there's an ick factor to that right now where people aren't going to want to use Fido and Fifi, but the reality is that's all usable. The chickens are easy, the fish are easy, and that's what we're doing right now.
Right.
They're actually using the technology. We do another one called aquamation, where we liquefy animals too, but we won't go there at this point. Make plant food.
I'd like to, there's been a question I'd like to ask. You had mentioned ministry. You think before the podcast, you said y'all have a heart for ministry. Would you like to talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. I'm following in the footsteps of my parents, who believed that they were put in there to build a business, run it on Christian principles in a secular world, and then take those proceeds and do good things with it. In our case, ministry work. The majority of that started in Haiti, and then as we got bigger, we ended up doing ministry work all over the world because people need sawmills to build huts and facilities around the world, and they were barging these things up and down rivers. It's really cool, the history. So given that their heart was to take a business in a secular world and turn it into a ministry tool, that's what we want to do too. So we've begun the same work in Haiti. We've got several tests there. It's dangerous now. I can't get in there to do much. We can't ship product. So we're also working in Africa, in Ghana, with Mission Resource International, and we're working on a program to distribute out of Ghana. There are other places in the country we're also working with and have materials in. It's been certified in Ghana already. There's another country, it's escaping me right now, where it's being certified in the government. And in those cases, people just need a leg up. They need to be able to take bad soil, theirs is depleted, and turn it into something they can make a buck, feed their family and sell a little bit. So over there, one of the big things is microloans. Okay. And Mission Resource International specializes in that. Loan somebody a little money, get a boat for their motor, sewing machine for ladies to make uniforms, whatever, make a little money, pay the loan back, and just keep that cycle going. And they're very successful, 95% return rate. Wow. We can use this as currency. Same thing. Provide it to somebody, and they really should pay for it to be, so they got skin in the game, but at a rate that allows them to go out and grow for that season, make some money, buy some more the next year, but keep paying them back. Then they feel good about themselves. They've had a job, something to do. They fed their family, and they get to move forward. So that's our goal over in Africa right now, is to put it in the hands of people so they can rejuvenate land, feed themselves and others, make jobs.
Amazing.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Casey, you got anything?
Yes, I do actually.
I figured you had something.
Yeah.
I just want to switch gears slightly. Scott, so you're an employer. So in what ways do you invest in your employees?
How do I answer that one?
What characteristics?
Culture is the main thing. It's the right culture. You treat people well, to the best of our abilities, to feed them with decent benefits, that sort of thing. But mainly it's culture. You want to go to work.
Yeah.
You know, right now we're slow because our off season, this is a pioneering job, and it's just a few of us there. Soon it will be, maybe half a dozen in this one facility, then we'll expand to the next one. But our history, let me go back to Wood-Mizer because I'm doing the same thing, is culture. Shane, you lived it.
I did.
The people, when I go to shows and meet them, some of our previous people that I worked with, they'll come back literally tears in their eyes to say thank you for what my dad did. It wasn't me. And the culture, and that's what I want to do. Treat people like you want to be treated. Golden rule. Show Christ in everything you do.
Casey, I can
live it with. You don't even have to say it out loud. Just show it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where we are.
I can also add to that, Casey. I can tell you from, like Scott just said, I kind of lived in that culture for several years, and Scott has a heart of a teacher, and he, there's many times that I maybe didn't grasp something. He would absolutely take the time to help me understand it, and that is, I don't know if you guys have ever worked for somebody like that has that passion to help you. It's a really cool thing to be a part of that.
Dad set the culture up in my department by always being in there. He'd be the first to do the nasty stuff. And he got in trouble with my mom all the time because we might have a dirty job to do or climbing up on something and whatever. And he'd be in his suit coat. He'd be the first one there. He'd never ask anybody to do anything he wouldn't do first. Wow. And I like to do the same thing. And when we're talking about dumping trailer loads of not so nice product, and it needs to be shoveled or moved around or whatever, I'll set by example. I'll be in there too. Wow. So for culture is where it's at, Casey.
Man.
That's good. Thank you.
What's our time looking like, Casey?
We're at 29 minutes.
29. So we're right on time. You got anything else, Cody? Did you think of?
I learned a lot today. I did. I definitely learned a lot, and I'm seeing great potential for your business, and not only that, but for just the world in general. It's what this product is going to be able to do for farmers and families.
Yeah, it's going to impact everybody.
Absolutely.
We all got to have food, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
and it's growing too.
So before we go, let me just pick your brain on one other thing. There may be young business owner out there, or somebody that's trying to get into business, and maybe they've started something, they failed. What advice would you have for somebody out there that's
An entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Wannabe? That's tough, because what we found is you're either an entrepreneur or you're not. And the true entrepreneurs are going to find their way through it. You're going to find, there's grant money or whatever. You're going to find that the government is not interested in investing in a chance. They're going to invest in culture groups and things like that. So if you're going to do it, be prepared to say, I'm not going to the lake this weekend. I'm not going to have a boat. I'm going to do whatever it takes, however many years it takes to make this happen. So from all the seminars I've seen and groups trying to train entrepreneurs, what I take away from it is they either are or they aren't. You can encourage them, and I would encourage anybody that's got an idea, go for it. But if you're not willing to stick it out, you need to check and see if you're really truly the entrepreneur you think you are. But entrepreneurs come in a lot of forms too. It might be a software program or something like that. What we do is quite different. I haven't had a paycheck in 10 years. Okay. Are you willing to do that? Do you have the resources to back up and support yourself during that period? You have to ask all those questions.
right?
And kudos to the people of the world, the Elon Musks and everybody else out there that make it happen. They create the jobs. They create solutions that are good for humanity. I hope we're one of those tiny little groups that can do that, and we're going to tough it out. We're almost there. And I'm excited about it and the ministry opportunities it provides. So,
Absolutely.
All right, man. That's awesome. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to see. You got anything else?
No, I'm
Cody?
good. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on
thank you.
here.
This is great. I love
Yeah,
talking
we
about it.
really appreciate having you. All right, folks, I think we're going to wrap it up. Check the description down there. We're going to try to put that link down there to, was it RFK?
RFK and Rucker.
We'll try to get that in there. And folks, why don't you go ahead and like this episode, subscribe if you haven't already. Helps us out a lot. But until then, we'll see you next time.